Money does not always kill with a gun because sometimes it kills by slowly taking away the reason to open your store in the morning. This is the tragic financial story of Elias Mercado, a man who believed family legacy was stronger than price wars until the numbers proved him wrong. His story is not just about profit margins, but about how a quiet financial hurricane can erase decades of dreams without a single drop of blood. If you ever wondered how a local business loses to impossible price competition, you are about to witness it sentence by sentence. Elias inherited Mercado family store from his father, who inherited it from his grandfather, who opened it with a handshake and a promise. The walls smelled like flour, rice, dried fish, and honesty, because everything inside was placed by calloused hands, not corporate budgets. Locals loved the store, not because it was the cheapest, but because it felt like walking into a place that remembered your name, your mother, and your favorite snack. Elias ran the shop with his wife Mira and his 2 teenage sons, who saw the business as something sacred, not something strategic. Their accounting system was a ballpoint pen, a notebook, and faith in returning customers. For decades, the store thrived because the town had loyalty, but loyalty changes whenever cheaper options arrive dressed like angels. The first threat arrived in the shape of a brightly lit supermarket chain with polished floors and prices that looked like kindness but were actually bait. Elias was not worried because he believed quality, compassion, and personal trust could never be discounted lower than dignity. But the market did not care about his confidence because numbers are blind, heartless, and allergic to nostalgia. When the supermarket posted a sale price that was lower than Elias' cost price, his heartbeat skipped like an overdue payment notification. His customers began whispering the most fatal words a business owner can hear, which were, "Why pay more?" Elias tried to smile, but every smile felt like unpaid rent hidden behind his teeth. His profit margin did not just shrink, it suffocated like a candle burning without oxygen. Elias refused to surrender because surrender felt like betraying every ancestor whose sweat was buried in those wooden floorboards. He reduced prices until his profits were so thin that even a small mistake could bury him beneath unpaid receipts. Then social media arrived like a shiny digital hurricane filled with influencers saying cheapest is smartest. The town that once valued familiarity suddenly worshipped discounts like new gods of modern convenience. Elias tried loyalty programs, but loyalty programs are powerless when customers chase low prices like treasure maps. He stayed polite, while his internal numbers screamed like unpaid debts, echoing inside a silent vault. Mira begged him to close early for rest, but he whispered that closing early felt like admitting defeat. They stopped eating full meals because they believed every saved coin was another day of survival. His 2 sons watched their father age faster than the expiration dates on canned goods. One night, Elias stared at the shop ceiling and realized the grocery was not a business anymore, but a battlefield. He knew that he could not win because he was fighting against companies funded by billions and protected by contracts, lawyers, and advertising budgets. The supermarket launched a price that defied logic and physics because it was lower than the cost wholesalers charged. Customers celebrated as if they discovered buried gold, while Elias felt like he was attending the funeral of his family legacy. His youngest son asked why the supermarket was cheaper, and Elias answered with a cracked voice that volume can destroy value. Wholesale chains used loss leaders, a trick where they sell some items at a loss to lure customers who then buy other overpriced goods. Elias could not afford loss leaders because he was not a corporation. He was a household. His costs included local taxes, manual labor, tradition, and emotional capital, which are not items you can scan with a barcode. His electricity bill alone could destroy a week of earnings if a refrigerator malfunctioned. Every night before closing, he hugged the old cash register like a soldier holding a wounded brother. His prayers changed from "please make the store grow" into "please let tomorrow not be worse." He placed motivational quotes on the wall, but even ink cannot outperform inflation. Customers started telling him, "We support you, but we must be practical," followed by a polite exit. Support without purchase is the most painful form of sympathy in business. Elias smiled and replied, "I understand," while his heart broke like thin ice beneath heavy footsteps. The turning point arrived on a cold morning when Elias noticed that even his most loyal elderly customers were carrying plastic bags from the rival store. He did not blame them because financial pressure transforms even the kindest hearts into survival-driven economists. His wife Mira tried to cheer him by repainting one shelf, using leftover gold-toned paint to make it appear premium. But premium without profit is like perfume on a sinking ship, because beauty cannot pay suppliers. Within a month, the family bank account balance looked like an abandoned desert with only dry numbers left. Elias asked his supplier for longer payment terms, but suppliers do not trade with hope. They trade with liquidity. He tried to negotiate a group buying discount with other small shop owners, but they were secretly planning to close as well. Fear spreads through small business communities faster than promotional flyers. Elias started printing handwritten discount tags, hoping emotion could outperform algorithms. However, pricing wars are not poetry. They are silent financial assassinations. The supermarket launched a buy one, take two event, which looked like generosity but smelled like a long-term monopoly blueprint. Elias knew that such a strategy only works when a corporation is rich enough to bleed without dying. He asked his oldest son to help with online marketing, but even free delivery could not overcome bulk pricing disparity. His youngest son suggested selling snacks in school, but competition was already there with cheaper imported treats. Every idea became a reminder that financial struggle can silence creativity like dust settling on forgotten ambitions. Mira cried quietly in the kitchen while slicing onions, pretending tears were from ingredients, not despair. Elias felt heavier each day, as if every unpaid invoice was a stone tied to his ribs. One night, he stared at the store sign and whispered that it did not glow the same anymore. The sign had lost not electricity, but meaning. In business, the most dangerous moment is not when money disappears, but when purpose evaporates. News articles online began praising the supermarket as a symbol of economic progress, while ignoring the slow funeral of local trade. Influencers recorded videos inside the brightly lit aisles, calling it the future, while never mentioning the casualties. Elias watched the videos and felt like his livelihood was being replaced by entertainment. He asked himself if small businesses were truly loved or simply tolerated until something cheaper arrived. The painful truth is customers do not always support what they praise, because liking a business is emotional, but buying is logical. Online comments, Reddit is business, not charity, which echoed like financial thunder inside Elias' weary head. One evening, a young man entered the store and said, "I love your shop, but your prices are too high. Can you match theirs?" Elias answered with a soft, tired smile, saying, "My suppliers do not match theirs." The young man shrugged and left without buying anything, leaving behind a silence that felt like bankruptcy breathing. Elias researched cost analysis and discovered that the supermarket paid lower taxes through corporate zones and received bulk import privileges. He felt like he was playing chess while the opponent was using drones, missiles, and sponsorships. He visited the town council and asked for help, but they only thanked him for his legacy instead of offering solutions. Legacy is beautiful, but it cannot be exchanged at the wholesaler counter. As weeks passed, the store aisles looked wider, not because they were spacious, but because fewer people walked through them. Empty space has a sound, and Elias learned to fear it. Mira tried holding free tasting day, but even free tasted expensive compared to unlimited discounts from the rival. When customers walked past without stopping, her smile trembled like plastic trying to mimic porcelain. One of Elias' sons started applying for part-time work at the same supermarket that was destroying their family store. Elias did not stop him because fathers sometimes hide pain to protect their children's wings. That night, Elias stared at his reflection and whispered that numbers were slowly replacing human hearts. He remembered his grandfather teaching him that business was about trust, but modern business was about algorithms. The parallel between tradition and technology felt like a duel where only one side had armor. Elias ran the numbers again and saw the worst metric a business can ever face. The cost of staying open was higher than closing forever. His heartbeat slowed, not from age, but from financial exhaustion. He asked himself if he was preserving legacy or delaying acceptance. All his life he believed good people win, but the market did not rank morality. The next morning he placed a closed for inventory sign, although there was nothing new to count. He sat alone inside and held the shop key like a survivor, holding a relic. Elias unlocked the cash register and stared at the coins that looked like remnants of a fallen kingdom. He counted every coin with trembling fingers, because each one felt like a chapter of sacrifice. The total amount could barely pay a single utility bill, which confirmed that time had defeated effort. Elias placed his palm over the counter and whispered a silent apology to the walls that heard his father laugh. He remembered his childhood when the shop was full of customers and the air smelled like rice and fresh stories. His father once told him that a business dies only when the owner loses faith, but Elias had faith without fuel. He closed the register drawer slowly, like closing a chapter that no longer had new pages. His eldest son entered and sat beside him without words because silence sometimes communicates what vocabulary cannot. The son held his father's hand and whispered that they still had each other, which melted years of unspoken fear. Elias looked at him and felt both shame and gratitude merging like two emotional rivers. He finally admitted that continuing the store was no longer brave, but destructive. When Mira arrived, she saw his eyes and understood instantly, because love often recognizes defeat before words explain it. She hugged him tightly and said that legacy does not end with a locked door. It ends when a family stops loving each other. Elias felt the weight on his chest loosen, not because the problem disappeared, but because acceptance had finally arrived. He stood up, took a deep breath, and prepared to do what every struggling business owner fears to do. With steady hands, he removed the open sign and replaced it with a handwritten message. The message read, "Thank you for the years you gave us, and we hope our story taught value, not price." He locked the door, and the click felt louder than any cash register ring he had heard in his life. The family stood outside, holding each other as the golden sunlight hit the wooden sign for the final time. Around them, people walked by unaware that they were passing a closed chapter in economic history. Elias raised his head and whispered that dreams are not measured by revenue, but by how long they inspire. The next morning, the supermarket announced another massive price drop in customers, celebrated like it was a community victory. No one realized the victory came with invisible chains, because dependence often begins disguised as convenience. With the local shop gone, the town no longer had a second option, which meant the supermarket held silent power. Prices slowly began to rise, not violently, but strategically, like a tide that hides its climb. The same customers who praised cheap deals now whispered confusion when discounts no longer appeared weekly. The supermarket introduced membership fees, vehicle coupons, and dynamic pricing that changed without warning. It was no longer affordable, it was algorithmically controlled. Meanwhile, Elias walked through town, unemployed yet unashamed because he carried values, not clearance tags. He observed how people now spoke in price-first language, forgetting the emotional currency of community trade. He realized that modern finance is not just numbers, it is psychological manipulation through consumer habits. Cheap today can become chains tomorrow when convenience becomes the only choice. Elias wrote down his reflections and formed his own conclusion about modern capitalism. He discovered that profit wars are never about selling cheaper. They are about eliminating competitors. He also realized that customers unknowingly participate in the destruction of small businesses by chasing short-term savings. The tragedy of retail is that people only miss small stores when they are gone. Elias turned his writing into a talk, sharing it with local schools so young minds understand the true cost of cheap. His message spread slowly like sunrise. Not fast, like discounts, but strong like principles. Listeners were surprised that a grocery owner understood more economic psychology than some officials. When asked if he hated the supermarket, he answered no, because business is not a battlefield of emotions but of strategies. He said that anger is useless, but awareness is priceless. People began recording his talks and sharing them online without flashy editing because truth needs no decoration. Elias' words traveled to thousands. Validation that a closed shop did not mean closed wisdom. 1 year after closing the store, Elias returned to the old building, which now displayed a for-lease sign, faded by sunlight. He placed his hand on the door and smiled gently, because he now understood that failure was not the right word for his journey. What he carried was not a lost business, but a completed chapter that others need to learn from. His sons no longer saw him as a defeated merchant, but as a wise man who turned loss into teaching. Mira whispered that legacy is not what stays open. It is what stays remembered. Elias now teaches community economics, speaking about sustainable pricing, ethical purchasing, and conscious consumer habits. He warns that when society worships cheapness, quality dies slowly without public funeral. He explains that when the lowest price wins, everyone eventually pays in other hidden ways. He reveals that the final cost of eliminating small competition is the destruction of choice, community, and cultural identity. People began realizing that communities grow stronger when they financially support each other instead of distant corporations. Elias became a respected voice on local finance, proving that wisdom does not require a podium. It requires lived experience. His story spread across towns, inspiring business owners not to chase price wars, but to chase authentic value. The same people who once ignored his struggle now thanked him for opening their eyes before their own dreams were endangered. Elias did not seek revenge because revenge is temporary, but awareness is generational. The old grocery is now a learning center painted with warm brass colors and wooden textures to honor its past. On the wall hangs the original store sign with scratches preserved as historical proof that value once lived here. Visitors place handwritten notes saying, "Thank you for teaching us that price is not the only measure worth chasing." Elias reads them with peaceful eyes, knowing that he did not lose a store. He gained a voice. The greatest victory in finance is to rise with purpose after falling with honor. The moral of the money is that cheap wins today, but value wins forever.